Today, the new right, or I guess major alt-right figures, I'm not really sure what exactly they call themselves, so I don't want to say the wrong thing, but like Lauren Southern, Gavin McInnes, Milo Yiannopoulos, a few other characters that are involved. They threw this event that was for free speech called Day of Freedom, and they had a bunch of people get on stage, including some like based homosexuals, some holograms, some trannies singing Shania Twain. It was a lot of fun. And a lot of people don't really know how to feel about it. I mean, about a week ago when they announced the event, I really made it known that I wasn't in huge support of some of the people that were going to be involved. And I got a lot of backlash for it. People were telling me not to be so cynical and that it was going to be great and everything. And I don't know, I feel like the tide has changed since the event today. And don't get me wrong, like there are a lot of people involved in it who I support individually. But as a whole, we have to talk about this event because nobody else will. It really feels like everybody's afraid to critique these people, like they have no other options and that they have to support this kind of thing.
All right, let's have a look at the transsexuals singing Shania Twain. Lauren,
I can't hear it, but
I know you can't hear it, but our crowd can hear it. Lauren, I sing better than this Shania Twain. I'm actually more feminine in my performance of Shania Twain.
Well, then let's throw our own event and you can sing for everybody.
That's the big problem with freedom of speech. If you let everyone free and you don't have an elimination system, you end up with all sorts of crap. So, first, Lauren, what speeches have you watched from this protest, and what has brought, what has catched your attention?
Okay, well, I mean, I listened to probably most of them, and I don't really remember the names to each speech, but I remember a lot of like what was said, and it seemed to be pretty much an anti-Islam rally. It's supposed to be about freedom of speech, but it was mostly about how everybody needs to speak out against Islam, because if Islam takes root, then we can't have our base gay utopia. That's like kind of how the feeling I got from watching all of that. I listened to Gavin McInnes, Milo, who was just extraordinary. He really knows his audience. He gets on stage and talks about how much money he has in his $4,000 jacket. Does he know that his audience is like almost entirely working class? And how unrelatable?
Sorry to jump in, but especially that audience. This is something, I've got a list of things that I want to say about this event today. And one of them is that he was directing his speech. He was behaving as if he was in America at a college, talking to a bunch of middle-class college kids. And he wasn't. He was talking to what looked like and sounded like a predominantly working-class English audience. And it was just completely off. And yeah, in various ways. It just didn't work. So, like his approach.
Let's have an in-depth conversation on this protest, and I will start with my initiating thoughts. I used to be a free speech absolutist, but I'm having more and more trouble with free speech. I've realized that whenever these events happens, and whatever form of free speech you want to defend, there will be other forms of speech that you will be oppressing. The example of today on the march was that, yes, many speakers were speaking against extremist religious people, against religious indoctrination. But when you think about it, the transmission of religious values is also free speech. And so whatever stance you take on free speech in the modern world, any sort of relevant stance you will take, you will end up taking a side on some speech and taking a side against some speech. I also find that our societies are, in defending free speech, they are often defending acts of aggression. For example, when it's the case for the media lying about people, we respect so much the freedom of the media in our current world that we have forgotten that speech is now a tool of aggression, a weapon in a war for information, and we don't value the damage that can be caused by this weapon. Lauren, what are your first thoughts on free speech, and why is it that you have this feeling that something is awkward in there, and that you feel that you are backing some of these individuals, but on the other end you have some issues?
Well, I mean, I'm pro free speech. I'm very pro First Amendment here, but this event definitely makes a case against the First Amendment. But I mean, I am pro free speech, but it was funny too because when I started complaining about the event today and that I thought it was kind of like, I mean, I thought it was ridiculous as a whole. Someone was annoyed with me and said that, well, of course they're gonna have what are they called? Drag queen dancing and singing. Everybody's allowed to speak. Well, then I should go up and speak. Everybody can just walk up and speak because it's a free speech event, right? It makes absolutely no sense. Just because you're talking about free speech doesn't mean I have to listen to you. It means I can still block you on Twitter. Just because I support your First Amendment right doesn't mean I need to let you into my house so you can come yell at me. I can listen to whoever I want. And if I'm running a free speech event, I can pick and choose who speaks there as well. The fact that they're having drag queens go up on stage, the based homosexuals who, well, I don't really want to say other things that they've done, but it's not just a matter of free speech. It's a matter of the view of the public on this group and creating this sort of persona for themselves that they aren't so far right and that they're very marketable. This is what creates the most profit, being very marketable to wide audiences. So I think it's pretty clear to me why they did what they did and the kind of people they're associating themselves with. And the sad part is that a lot of these people call themselves conservatives. And that's where it comes into the individual's argument. But I don't know if Woes wants to jump in about how he feels about free speech.
It should be noted that when the protest happened, there were also anti-protester people who were calling themselves anti-fascist and who were considering that this group, although it is marketed as a free speech event, that it is essentially a right-wing group. Millennial Woes, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is all to do with the polarization that's going on. You know, to the three of us, the people that spoke at that event today seem very milquetoast, liberal, progressive, to be honest, in some ways. And but to the Antifa, these people seem like fascists. These people seem as very far right and all that. So it's a very difficult. I mean, this is an extremely complex issue that we're discussing here. You know, we could go on about this. I mean, how long do we have?
We generally do a format for 1 hour, but we will not cut out good content, so feel free to go as much in depth as you want.
Right, I do have a list of points that I came up with. I was wondering whether to make my own video about this. I think, like, since I'm coming in here, I want to say that, like Lauren, I do support and admire several of the people involved in this. So I don't want to seem too harsh, but at the same time, it does seem like collectively this has been, well, to us at least, it's rather an embarrassment. But again, we've always got to think, how do our opposition see this? How do our mutual enemies see this? Now, on the one hand, maybe they're very scared by it. Or on the other hand, maybe this is exactly what they want, because it's driving people's attention, people's thoughts away from the fundamental issues of our time to something fairly trivial. And really, it's bringing people back to degeneracy. So, but at the same time, our enemies crow about this and moan about this. So I don't know what to think. You know, like Hope Not Hate are saying that these people are a bunch of haters. And that seems ridiculous, but maybe they mean it, or maybe they don't mean it. You know, it's all very difficult to know. It's very difficult to know what's going on here. And I also wonder about the people, some of the people involved in this. When they bring in a drag queen and and people who are not white, are they doing that out of naivety, or are they doing it to deliberately derail things? You know,
I think it's
again, it's very complex.
I think it's a deliberate action when when you invite a trans like this, it's not out of random. The idea was to cover a lot of ground on the political spectrum. But as you say, the political spectrum is getting more and more divided, and to the point where can we even have that kind of unified event around liberty in the current political context without having everyone pull on their side on what's the freedom of what? The freedom of what is the most important thing. And
well,
you know,
can I cut in here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you say that it's about how can we have unity of thought. And I think that's a big thing here because, well, first of all, I think that having a tranny and that kind of thing, this could have been an event for white native British people to have some sort of solidarity, to realize that they are a people and so on. But instead, degeneracy was injected and several non-white people were injected into it. So it suddenly becomes, well, progressive. It becomes...
Well, it was a clown show. I mean, I just want to interrupt here and say, if you're trying to bring in drag queens, homosexuals, LGBT people into an event like this, or non-whites, etc., all these characters, what kind of audience are you trying to grow? Because who did you not have previously that you're now going to gain by having a drag queen on stage? Are you saying you're trying to grow your base and bring in LGBT members? Because that's the only people I could see becoming attracted to them for the first time because of this event.
And that's not going to happen.
And I don't want that. I don't want to attract these people.
Yeah. And if it did happen, it would be bad. So it's like the GOP trying, bending over backwards to attract black voters, and it won't work. But in the meantime, it will damage the GOP because they're compromising other interests. So I think it's the same thing here. You seek these LGBT folk; they're not going to come anyway. And in the meantime, you've stood in opposition to traditionalism. Well done.
So we have a few super chats and then we can keep talking about it because it's a fascinating subject. Vodka says, Lawrence Saturn. Oh, I will not read this. John Smith, $2. Thank you. Idon, $5 US says, drag queens singing at the Day of Freedom proves Anglos deserve everything happening to them. Ryan Lackey, $2 US says, JF should sing. Maybe another time because I tend to lose 500 audience when I sing. So let's keep it for later. John Marshall, £5. Thank you for the donation. Vodka says, Lauren, no, I will not read this one. Pinky Culture. Pinky Culture is one of our viewers who is obsessed by pinkies, and he asked for Lauren to post her pinkies on Twitter. So he keeps asking me. I've never done it. Maybe I will at some point, but he wants us to take a picture of our pinky. All the words, £5 says, all the degenerate shit really distracted from the message. It was so poorly handled, it will give birth to a whole host of controlled up conspiracies. Sean Taylor, 5NZ, says, I have to go to work, so we'll miss this live, but here's some love for always putting on a great show. The Drunken Dwarf says, host a debate on individualism versus collectivism. Very good idea. For posterity, $5 says, it's more than Islam as bad as it is. I want European countries to stay 85-90% their respective ethnicities. Ireland should be Irish, etc. Alze says, hi Lauren, you miss me? Thank you, Alze. Iroka, $5 US says, next time they will have to get a cutie cat boy on stage if they want the alt-right audience. And Alfonso Beltran, $5 US. JF Millennial Woes mentioned degeneracy. Can you ask him to define degeneracy and ask him what a good argument against it is? So, Millennial Woes, what is degeneracy in your view?
Degeneracy is the act or process of breaking down a people and an individual and their spiritual health. But I mean, that's what it means in our context. Obviously, in other contexts, it means different things.
Yeah, generally it means, I think that the way it is used in the alt-right, it means it's somehow acting against the nature of your own existence or your own interest as seen from a usually traditionalist perspective.
Yeah, it's sacrificing long-term health for short-term pleasure or thrill-seeking.
All right. And so, concerning the content of the speeches, Millennial Woes, did you explore a little more of the speeches? Because I didn't get to the Sargon of Akkad part.
Right. Well, first of all, just 2 points raised earlier on that I want to address. You said that it was across the spectrum, that this thing. It wasn't, I don't think. I think it was very much what you might, well, what the far left call far right, but what we call alt-centre. Or I'm just making that up just now. I would maybe call them alt-centrists. And basically what they believe in, or what they preach is freedom. Freedom, 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 and nothing else. So that's one thing. I wouldn't say that this was across the political spectrum at all.
Absolutely, and I want to clarify, I didn't mean that it was a large spectrum of political views. I mean that this is what they intended when they brought a trends. They probably think that those are the legitimate political views, and of course the far right is not part of what they perceive as part of the legitimate political spectrum.
Yes, indeed. And the other thing I wanted to say was picking up on something you said earlier. In the end, I agree with you. I think that in the end, people don't actually want free speech. They want, say, a safe space. I mean, people just want stability. They want predictability. They want to, intellectuals, people who are interested in ideas, they have a use for free speech and free inquiry. But most people don't. Most people just want to know what the situation is and how to get by in life. From one day to the next. That's so, yeah.
I genuinely think that they want free speech. Like, I definitely believe
this might be an American versus Britain thing. Of course, people want free speech in the sense that they want to know that if they have a complaint, their voice will be heard. Of course, people want free speech in that sense, but I think from day to day, most people don't have much of a use for it. That's why it's so easy for in Europe for them to implement hate speech laws, because most people don't actually, they're not interested. They're not even, most people are very apolitical, to be honest, at least in Britain. Maybe in America it's different. I think people do tend to have more agency in America, to be honest.
Right. And what about the content of what the speakers, when they did get on the mic, what they were saying? I mean, imagine disliking Islam because it's trad. Because that seems to be the only reason they dislike the incoming Muslim hordes, which is honestly the only reason I don't dislike them. There are many other reasons why I don't want them coming to Europe and the US, but being trad is probably the last one.
Yeah, well, Islam is fundamentally un-European, and therefore it should not. I know that people will say, well, Christianity was whatever, that's 2,000 years ago. We're in the situation we're in now, and Islam is a fundamentally foreign religion, culture, way of life. So I don't want it in the West. But at the same time, to pick on it because it upholds conservative or socially conservative values, and, well, let's put it this way, to pick on Islam because it upholds the traditional family, it's kind of retarded, because the society can't survive without the traditional family. And it can't survive without social norms either, which is another issue here. That's actually a very important issue with this whole thing today. We need social norms. And it comes back to what I said a minute ago. I think people, there is a difference between the elite and the masses. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I say it respectfully. I think I respect the ordinary man, the everyday people for how they are. And I think that to pretend that they just want license and endless freedom is to disrespect them, because you're not being honest about them. And you're setting them up for degeneracy, actually. I'm sorry to use that word again, but that's what you're setting them up for. When you say to them, oh, just do away with social norms and let everyone do whatever they like, well, that leaves them prey to their lowest drives within themselves, and it leaves them prey to a sick popular culture. So
right.
we need social norms, and they hate Islam because it provides social norms. And I'm not saying that I like the social norms of Islam, but I think that it's a bit silly to go against it for that reason alone.
Right. I'm not a Muslim, and I'm not the biggest fan of Islam or anything. But the problem is you and I, Woes, are opposed to Islam for a different reason than the alt-right and the people that were on stage today were. We're opposed to it because it's not European and it doesn't belong here. And neither do the people who are bringing Islam here with them. They're opposed to it because it's anti-degeneracy, it's anti-gay, it's anti all these other things that they want that is not acceptable in Muslim culture. So, I mean, it's a fundamental difference there. And I asked this question on Twitter today, which I think is really interesting. The worst part about it is that if the incoming hordes of Arab Muslims or African Muslims that are coming here now were atheists or pro-degeneracy, it'd be a case of the more the merrier. At least that's how they make it out to be. Like, if whether or not whether or not they care about race, you know, we don't really know that for sure, but they say they don't. So if that were true, if the Africans and Arabs coming here were pro-degeneracy, anti-Islam, atheists, they'd be happier with that.
Yeah, they'd be happy with race treachery, miscegenation, and a descent into a complete lack of social norms. I'm sorry, it doesn't sound like a bright future, to be honest.
I think you two are putting your fingers on a very important phenomenon, which is the reason why the left likes immigration. And it's a very special reason. I think that they like immigration because they import people who believe like them on some issues. Now, in fact, the problem with Islam is that the incoming Islamic populations have values that are totally contradictory with the kind of careless libertarian left, the left that wants to do anything, that wants to let their children do anything. Islam is completely opposite to this, but what we see in countries like Canada is that they still like Muslims. They like them, and the way they construct it in their brain is like, oh, this is something exotic. This Muslim lifestyle, it's something different, and you have to respect it. But they wouldn't be able to even respect the same level of traditionalism in a white Catholic or a white Christian in their own nation.
Yes, it's disgusting. I mean, they're just worshipping the other. And actually, again, disrespecting the other by sort of fetishizing it and treating it like a brown novelty. You know, it's actually quite dehumanizing, to be honest.
Right. They just want the ethnic food and the foreign friends so that they can say they have them.
Yeah, the incredible range of restaurants.
Exactly.
But the thing about the left, just to pick up on something you said there, JF, about there is the cultural left that you just talked about there. They want immigration because, yes, immigrants facilitate some things that the left want to do culturally. Then the political parties on the left, they want immigration because immigrants vote for them. But it's not because, you know, Muslims and so on actually share progressive values. You know, this is a big thing and this is crucial to this matter as well, because I gave a speech about Jordan Peterson a few months ago. One of the points I made in that speech is that in the Netherlands, Muslim immigrants vote left, but they could vote in the Turkish elections and they vote right in those elections. So they vote right in Turkey, but they vote left in the Netherlands. And this very same thing happens in Germany. Turks vote left in German elections, but right in Turkish elections. So they're not actually, they're using our progressive parties, our left-wing parties, for a reason, which is that they know that those policies will weaken us, break us down, and enable more of them to come into our countries. But they don't actually share any of these values.
All right, TKUA says, it's still important to fight for free speech right now. It's becoming a problem right now and used against right wing. Please support some of these people. And user 44 says, evening, JF. Ask these two for their opinions on the Irony Bros. Interesting video of them talking about it on Twitter. Just looking for clarification. Does any of you know what these Irony Bros are? I have no idea.
I have no idea what that is.
It's from Millennial. It's from our hangout that we did in December. Someone was talking about it on Twitter earlier today. There were a bunch of guys who didn't like women being in the alt-right and were just making a fuss about it back in December. That's all.
Oh, wow. So I would have made the wrong decision by having Lauren on. For the Irony Bros, I lost them as an audience.
You'll get over it.
All right, Medina Rose, did you have any other point you wanted to explore from the speeches?
Oh yeah, loads. Well, first of all, I should say that I saw Milo's speech, which I thought was just awful. And Sargon's speech, which was all right, he was speaking in defense of personal liberty. That's fine as far as it goes. That's fine. I saw some of Gerard Batten's speech, and he was speaking about the importance of free speech. Fine. Who else did I see? Tommy Robinson briefly, Raheem Kassam, but I don't think I saw his full speech. I don't know if he gave a full speech, but I saw him talking. I think that was it. It was... I just don't... It's in the case of Milo, I thought he just came across as very insincere, and I didn't like that. And as I said earlier, he seemed to be aiming it towards an American audience. He seemed to not be able to switch back to Britain. But then again, he's such a weird guy. I mean, he's not really British. And he doesn't even seem... Well, maybe to Americans he seems British. I don't know.
He's very American culturally, so I guess that he's got some of that First Amendment instinct in him.
Yeah, exactly. And then he was joking about sucking black cocks. And
the usual.
Yeah, and joking about the dangers of flying economy. And I thought, you're addressing a working class audience and you're making a joke like that. How fucking tone deaf could you be? And just how up yourself could you be? And then he was making a joke about what was that, a Lamborghini? I don't know if that was serious or not. It just didn't seem right. What else? Okay, so one big thing. Well, first of all of the people involved in this, there's obviously been a huge effort for them to not seem... They didn't want this to seem like a far-right rally. But the thing is, they're still going to be demonized as far-right, racist, Nazi, alt-right, white supremacist. They're still going to be named with that. So the whole thing is kind of pointless. You may as well I wish they had the courage of their convictions, to be honest, or not be so naive. What else? Oh yeah, Sargon said, freedom, if it means anything, is the freedom to be left alone to your own devices. And I thought that spoke of the individualist ethos. I mean, again, as far as it goes, I can understand that. I don't like totalitarianism, but it's naive at the same time, because you can be left alone to your own devices whilst your society is transformed all around you, because another group is collectivizing and they're getting things done. They're actually reshaping your society whilst you are in your house just doing your own thing, left to your own devices. Well, congratulations. That's a dreadful Pyrrhic victory. Well, it's not even a Pyrrhic victory. It's a complete loss, complete defeat, because these groups that are prepared to collectivize against you will completely fuck you up. They'll take over your society, and that's what we're seeing right now.
It's largely an illusion to be talking of being left on your own devices in any society, any modern society. We are heavily invading on personal liberties. Taxes are very high. We intervene in the way people can dispose of their land, of their children, of their marriage. In fact, under marriage law in the US, in its current implementation, you essentially cannot enter in a marriage contract that you desire, because a judge can undo any such contract at his will and make the decisions that he thinks are better for your children in the future. So there's literally no way you can enter into a contract that you'd like to enter in with a woman. So our current lives are being invaded by the state, and to cultivate this idea that we are left to our own devices and that we do have liberty in our world is a joke. Yes, indeed. I think this idea of libertarians take this idea too seriously, and they're autistic. They're delusional about it. And again, to come back to something I said earlier, I think that people don't really need or want absolute freedom, they don't want to be left alone most of the time. They want to have a culture that they can take part in, that they can understand, and they want social norms to guide them in life. So I think that this idea, well, it's the delusion of the libertarian. He would like to be left alone. He sees himself as the Ubermensch who can handle anything. And he doesn't give a fuck about people who can't handle that situation. Well, what if most people are like that? If they can't handle that, then it's very socially destructive.